Hi everyone, in this video we are going to code and style the header section of our website. So first off, we are going to jump into just coding all the necessary parts. We're going to have logo, we are going to have all the navigation links, and there are going to be two types of logo. So one is going to be this light, and when we scroll we need to provide that dark logo as well, that dark version of the logo as well. So after that we are going to jump into CSS, and then we are going to jump into JavaScript, where I'm going to teach you how you can basically come up with this effect. When you scroll down, the logo changes, the text changes, the text color for the navigation, the background of the header changes, and then there is this border radius on the bottom of the header. So let's keep it simple. Let's jump into HTML first. Now within the header, I'm going to delete that text. That was just a placeholder text, and let's jump into how we can create this. So we are going to have the logo, one logo, and then we are going to have a navigation. Now there is something else as well, and that component is not seen until the width of the screen is really small, and then that is the hamburger menu. So we need to create this hamburger menu as well, but it is only going to show when the width of the screen is less than 650. So first we have our logo. This is going to be an anchor element, which is going to redirect to the same website, and it is going to have a class of header underscore logo. It's not going to go anywhere, it's just going to redirect to the current page. Now there are two versions of our logo. One is dark and one is light. So I'm going to say logo light. This is going to be an image. Let's jump into the images folder. From there I'm going to go to header, and then I'm going to grab the light.svg. I'm going to say light version of logo, and I'm going to give it a class as well. Now before giving it a class, there is an attribute of HTML images, and that is called lazy loading. Now what lazy loading does is when you don't specify it on your images, when you go to visit any website and it does not have lazy loading on, what happens is that all the images, let's say that website is image heavy, and all the images, they're going to be shown at the same time. So like from the top of the web page all the way to the bottom of that web page. Even though you might not go ahead and scroll to the bottom, but the bottom side, that is going to, the images are going to load, they're going to consume data, and they're going to be, that website is going to become a little bit heavy, and it's going to take a little bit of a while to load that website. But when we do loading is equal to lazy, what this means is that unless you scroll downwards, the images that are not visible to you, that are not within your viewport, they're not going to be shown. And when you scroll those images, then they're going to make a call to the server, and those images are going to be shown. So this is going to significantly improve the performance of our website. Cool. Let's say class. The class is going to be logo-light, and I'm going to save this. So this is logo light. We can take a look at it. If we go to top, this is the light version of the logo, and I'm going to have a darker version of it as well, a dark version. I'm just going to copy that. Let's come here. This is going to be logo dark. This is going to be logo dark. There we go. Lazy loading, loading is equal to lazy, and then we are going to say logo. Let's grab both of these, and I'm going to say dark. So dark version of logo and light version of logo. Now that the logo is done, let's get rid of the anchor element. Let's jump into our navigation. So in the navigation, I'm going to use the semantic element nav, and I'm going to give it a class of header underscore nav. Now, we are going to create our lists. The lists, they're going to be within a UL that is going to have a class of header underscore nav dash links. Now, how many links do we want to create? We want to create 8 links, and all of them are going to have the same styling. Therefore, they're going to have the same class. So I'm going to say li. Now I'm gonna give you a shorthand. This is an image trick. With one line of code, you can create all of your content. So this li, this is going to have. So how many of these li's we want? We want to have 8 li's. Each of them is going to have this class. Let's copy that, put it there, underscore link. Now within the li, what do we want? So within there, which is a child selector, this is the direct child selector. Within there, I'm going to have an anchor element. The anchor element's href or hypertext reference is going to be set to number sign, and that's it. So let me enter. There we go. This is what we want. I'm going to go back, comment that one out just for your reference, and I'm going to hit enter again. There we go. So now keep in mind to write within your anchor element, not within the li itself. Therefore, that cursor is already there. So the first one, let's say home. The second one is going to be features. Then we have about. Then we have why, team, testimonials, and then blog, and finally newsletter, which is going to be the footer. So newsletter. Let's save that. Let's take a look at our changes. There we go. The only thing remaining would be that hamburger menu, which we're not going to style it now. When we get to responsive part of this video, we're going to style that then. So it doesn't have any content. It is just a hamburger menu. I'm going to create a div with the class of hamburger. This is going to be the class. And within there, I'm going to create another div, actually 3 divs. Each of them is going to have a class of hamburger-li. Let's hit enter. There we go. So this is what we have created with that shorthand. So you can see these image tricks, they actually speed up the process of web development quite a lot. Now that we are, I think, this is the logo. This is the navigation. And here is the hamburger. I think we are done with the HTML. Let's jump into CSS. So first things first, I told you that this height, this is just a placeholder so we can see our sections. I'm going to get rid of that. Actually, I'm really against providing heights for your sections. We don't need any background because that which you see right here, this is not a background for this header. This is actually this SVG that we're going to add upon which this header is located. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some padding. Now we do have specific padding for height, for top and bottom, and specific padding for left and right. So I'm going to say var padding. So for top and bottom, I'm going to say MV, and for left and right, I'm going to say padding XLH. So extra large H. There we go. Now we want the header to be fixed. So when we scroll down, we don't want it to go away. Therefore, we are going to say position fixed. This is going to take it out of the document flow. Therefore, we need to provide it with specific coordinates. Where do we want it to be applied, to be located? So top of 0 according to the body of the HTML, body of the web page, and left is going to 0 is going to be 0, and the width is going to be 100% of the width of its container. Now within the actual header, there are 3 elements. The logo, the navigation, and the hamburger, and we want them to be we want them to be flex items. So display flex, justify content. Let's set it to space between. Let's save that. Let's take a look at our changes. So here are the logos. We are going to hide one of them when we are in this mode. And when we scroll down, we are going to hide the light version and we're going to show the dark version. With JavaScript, of course. And in this website, I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to explain the JavaScript for you. So yay. Align items is going to be center vertically. We're going to give it a transition because it is going to be transitioning from that, from how it looks, from the position static to when we come down and you can see this transitioning to position fixed. Okay, so transitioning all 0.35 seconds is an out. I'm going to create two classes here that are going to be toggled with JavaScript. The first one is going to be hidden. And when we say hidden, the property that is going to be applied on any element who's going to receive this class is going to be display none. And you guessed it right, these are going to be applied on the logo itself. And the other one is going to be block. These are CSS classes that don't have any connection to our HTML yet. We are going to link these classes to our HTML using JavaScript, and I'm going to tell you how. Display block. There we go. So next up, we need to style how the header is going to look like when we are scrolling down. So we can see clearly right here. So if I come down, you can see clearly that the appearance of the header is changed. So we need to style that as well. So the background is changed. The background, it didn't have any background here, but it clearly has a background, and that is the color white or color primary. The padding is going to change, so you can see the padding changes. We need to provide it with some border radius as well. This is when the header is in its sticky phase. So we know that position fixed, it switches or toggles between static and sticky. As long as you don't scroll, it is position static. And when you scroll, it is going to go to position sticky. So this is position sticky. That's why I'm going to say header when the header has a class of position sticky. Now here is something that you need to keep in mind. So I'm going to zoom in once and I'm going to zoom in twice. You can see that between these two classes, there is no space because this sticky class, it belongs to the header. If there were any space here, then that space indicates a descendant selector. And what does it mean? What it means is actually that this header class element, this header class, it has a child whose class is sticky. That is not the case. In this manner, if there is a space, it means that whatever comes after the space is a child or descendant of whatever comes before the space. So we are going to remove that space because this header has another class, and that class is sticky. Sticky is not a descendant of the header. It's just another class the header has. So I needed to explain that as well. So background color, this is going to be primary. Clearly the padding changes. So when I go to that, when the header is in its sticky position, I'm going to change. You know what? I'm not going to give it any padding. We are going to see how the padding actually reacts, and based on that, we're going to give it padding. So border radius. Now this border radius is going to be for the bottom left radius and the bottom right radius, because clearly the top left and top right, they don't have any radii. So I'm going to say bottom dash left. So this is border bottom left radius. I'm going to provide in two values. The first value is going to be for the bottom line of the border, and the other one is going to be for the left. So the bottom and the left, they create this border bottom left radius, this border bottom left edge. So each edge is consisting of two lines, right? One is the bottom and the other one is the left one. So the first value, which is 50%, this pertains to the bottom line, and the other one pertains to the left line. We're going to do the same thing for border right radius. Let's provide it with some box shadow. I don't think we have talked about box shadow. Box shadow provides some shadow for our elements as though they are actually away from. It gives them a little bit of depth, which is cool for users. It's a micro interaction, if you would, and that provides it a little bit of more interesting and aesthetic look. So you can see these sections, these cards within our features, and you can see that it seems like it is grayed out behind these cards. That is because there is actually a shadow, and it gives us that illusion that the cards are actually away from the page, like that 3D illusion. And that's something that is a little bit aesthetic to the eye. Cool. So the first value is going to be the horizontal offset. The second value is going to be the vertical offset. It means vertical shadow. in simple terms. The third value, keep in mind, the order is very important in box shadow. The third one is going to be how blurry you want your shadow to be. So you want to have exactly like a solid shadow, like a square shadow, or you want it to be blurred out so it looks better. And then we are also going to have a spread radius, how far you want your shadow to be spread. And then you need to provide a color for your shadow. So I'm going to say 167, 167, 167, and then the alpha channel is going to be 0.16. And I'm going to provide it with a z-index of 10. So these styles, they're not being applied on our header as of yet, because the fixed is being applied, but the rest of them, the sticky, it has to be applied with JavaScript. So let's move on and let's style these anchor elements. Now, before actually styling the anchor elements, let's style these links that we have, and let's provide them with whatever it is that they need. So they are within the nav. So I'm going to say header underscore nav. I'm going to give it a width, and I'm going to say, okay, you can occupy 70% of the width of your container. And after that, let's grab the header nav dash links container, which is the UL. So within here, we're going to have all of our LIs. We're going to say display flags, and all of them are going to be laid out horizontally, because that is the default direction of the flex container. Justify content center, align items. Justify content justifies them horizontally. Align item aligns all of the flex items collectively vertically, and we are going to say center. Gap among the items is going to be 2VW, highly relative value. There we go. So here are our links. Let's jump in and let's grab each of our anchor elements and let's style those as well. So I'm going to say header, links, and within there we're going to have anchor elements. Let's increase the font size to --STS. So this is static small. The color is going to be color, var primary. There we go. Font weight, let's set it to 500. You could create custom properties for the font weight as well. Transition for these is going to be all of the elements with 0.15 seconds, and the timing function is going to be ease in. Z-index is going to be the same as their header, their parent, which is going to be 10, not 100. And when we hover on these links, what do we want to do? So when we hover on them, we want to just change their color from primary to color tertiary 1. Just save that, and there we go. So this is color tertiary 1, blue. There we go. So they're going to have two different hovers. We are going to talk about the other hover right now. So when they're in their normal position, the hover is going to be tertiary 1. But when they're when the header goes into the sticky phase, this hover is going to change to that quaternary color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on top after the header sticky, and we are going to style whenever the anchor elements, they're in this sticky position as well. So header dot sticky, when the header is sticky, what do we want to do? We want to grab the header nav links, and from there we're going to grab the anchor elements. Now keep in mind that these styles, they're only going to apply when the header is in its sticky position, and that is going to be toggled using JavaScript towards the end of this this lecture, or maybe right after this. Let me just take a look at the website. So we need to make this responsive as well. I'm going to do all of that within this lecture. So I could provide the JavaScript for this, and then we could jump into making it responsive. We could do that too. I mean, both ways is correct. So when the header is in a sticky position, we want the anchor elements to have a color secondary. So color secondary. And they're going to have, when the header is in its sticky position, we want the hover for the anchor elements to be, what is going to be the color of the hover? So it's going to be var color quaternary. There we go. So far so cool. So all of these styles for the desktop version, they're completed. The reason that they don't look alike is because the hero section has this color tertiary one, I assume, and this one, it has an SVG. So after we are done with the hero section, then it is going to look like this. So far we're just focusing on this header. Keep that in mind. So now let's jump into JavaScript. There we go. So what do I want to do here? Now keep in mind, first let's go over what it is that we want to do here. First, we want to grab these headers. When we scroll, we want, so when we are in the normal position, when the web page is loaded, we want to see the light version. And when we scroll in the Y direction, we want the light version of the logo to go away, and we want the dark version to kick in. So that is the first thing that we want to do. The second thing that we want to do is that we want to provide all the styles that we have created right here, to all of these styles, we want to provide them to our header when we scroll down. So this is functionality, and this is done with JavaScript. So first things first, about JavaScript. JavaScript works in the same way almost as CSS when you're working with DOM, Document Object Model. Document Object Model is what you see on the web in front of you. That is documented. So if every web page is actually a document. And how this web page is represented in the form of HTML elements, that is the document object model. This is the model. So within this model, what do we have? We have a body, we have a header. Within the header, we have an anchor element. Within the anchor element, we have an image. So all of these are the DOM representation of our HTML. This is how JavaScript thinks. This is how JavaScript works. Very simple. When it comes to DOM, so JavaScript is pretty complicated. I don't want to talk about that. We are just talking about how we can change DOM elements, so how we can change or how we can provide interaction or functionality to our web pages through JavaScript. So JavaScript can provide functionality for HTML elements, but first you need to be able to select which HTML element it is that you can provide functionality for. Now, how JavaScript selects HTML elements is almost the same as CSS. So how do you select HTML elements with CSS? You use classes, so we have a whole bunch of selectors. We have ID selectors, class selectors, pseudo class, pseudo element. All of those are valid. Most of those are valid for JavaScript as well. So that is one thing. The other thing, general thing about JavaScript is that when you work with JavaScript, because JavaScript is a programming language, you need to save everything. Then JavaScript will work. So when you grab something from HTML, that thing is not going to be recognized by JavaScript. So you need to save that within a JavaScript box. Think of it like that. So what we did with CSS was we grabbed an HTML element, and when we brought it to the world of CSS, we converted it from an HTML element to a CSS box, right? Then we styled that box, and in relation to that, or subsequently, the element, the selected element was styled as well. So the same idea works for JavaScript as well. So when you want to grab HTML elements and bring them into the world of JavaScript, in CSS, they became boxes, but in JavaScript, they become variables. That is what the meaning of JavaScript variables is. So we need to create variables. Why? So we can work with them, so we can give them functionality. The same way that when we wanted to style an HTML element, we need to first convert it into a box. I mean, that happens behind the scenes. You don't really have to do that active work, but in JavaScript, you have to do active work to convert that HTML element to a JavaScript variable. How do we do that? There are certain standards and practices that we need to follow. One of them is header. So, one of them is let. So we are going to say let. It means that we want to create a variable. Why do we want to create a variable? One of the points, one of the applications of creating variables in JavaScript is because we want to grab HTML elements and store them within this variable. Very simple. So each variable is going to have a name. So I'm going to call this header, and then that name is going to have a value. So we are going to say go to the HTML document. This document means HTML document. And from there, query. So this is a method. So in CSS, we said, okay, class selectors and all those cool stuff. In JavaScript, we have query selector and query selector all. So we are going to say, okay, query that and select from there. What do we want to select? So we want to select any element that has a class of header. Keep in mind, within these quotes is the realm of CSS. This is CSS. So any valid CSS selector can be used within these quotes. This is how HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, they're linked to each other. So now we have selected our header. This is not a JavaScript course. I've already talked a lot. I shouldn't have talked this much about JavaScript. I could teach you, and it could take like 20 hours. I do have a JavaScript course on Udemy. You can go ahead and check it out. And the link is in the video description. And there is basically more than 60 hours of content about JavaScript. And even though I haven't like covered more than 40% of it, because that is so extensive language, JavaScript. So after that, so we grab the header. Why do we want to select the header? Is because when we scroll, we want to change its style. That's why we have selected it. Keep in mind, you need to have a good reason, a logical reason for why you're selecting something in JavaScript. I mean, in CSS, it's not that necessary. It could go a little bit crazy, but in JavaScript, it is absolutely imperative to know why you have selected that, because you want to do something with it. If you don't want to do anything with that, don't clutter your JavaScript. Just go ahead and get rid of it. Now, we want to provide styles on the header when we scroll. That's why we select header. And what is the other thing that we want to select? The other thing is going to be logo light and then logo dark. Why? Because when we are in the desktop version and we are not scrolled and the web page is shown as it is, we want to show the light version and we want to remove the dark version. And when we scroll, we want to remove the light version and show the dark version. So we need to select both versions. I'm going to say logo light. Logo light, the way you can see how I've written the name of the variable, this is a JavaScript convention. It's called camel case. So we are going to say query selector. And what is the realm of, which realm is within these quotes? Single or double doesn't really matter in JavaScript. You can go both ways. It is the realm of CSS. So any a valid CSS selector could be used here. So I want to grab the logo light. Logo light has a class. I'm just going to copy that class. So CSS selector, right? Therefore, I need to provide the dot. And I'm gonna copy this line and I'm gonna grab the logo dark as well. And let's change the name of this variable, dark. Save everything, very good. So this is logo dark, cool. So we have selected all of these. Now what do we want to do? When we scroll, that means that when we change our position within the window, that is what actually scrolling means in JavaScript. So we are going to say window. What do we want to do with window? When a certain event is triggered. So an event in the world of JavaScript means that anything that the user does, if the user clicks, if the user types, if the user scrolls, if the user fills out a form, all of these are events in JavaScript. And you can grab any of these events and you can provide functionality on those events. And then the user is going to be thrilled. Okay, this website is interacting with me. That is how JavaScript works with websites. So I want to add an event listener, which is going to listen to some kind of event. What is that event? The event is when the user scrolls. So what do you want to do after that? So when the user scrolls, I want to do something. So when you want to do something, you need to create a function in JavaScript. As the name says, function, it does something. It functions, it provides functionality. So you want to do something in JavaScript, you need to create a function. This add event listener is also a function because it has parentheses. Anything having a parenthesis is a function, be that in JavaScript, and CSS or anywhere. So what do we want to do when the user scrolls? So the first thing is we want to provide all these styles to the header, all these sticky styles. So I'm going to say, and those styles, they were in the form of a class, right? So what is that class? Let us go ahead and take a look at that class. So if I come in here, so this is this class, right? Sticky. We need to grab this class and paste it on the header. We need to give it to the header. Now, before actually doing that, I need to show you something. This is the website that we are currently working on. Let's jump into the completed website. So now we did not scroll any in the Y direction. Scrolling is in the Y direction. Let's take a look at the header. I'm going to zoom in on the header. So when you open up the website, nothing happens. The header has a class of header. But if I just grab the scroll bar and if I just come down a little bit, you can see that as soon as the header, the sticky class is added to the header automatically or dynamically, we can see all these styles that are being applied as well. So when I scroll the window along the Y direction, I want to add that sticky class to my header. That is the only thing that JavaScript is going to do for us. That is what JavaScript actually does for us. So you want to do something with this web page when something happens. Scroll is an event in JavaScript. And when that event happens, I want to do something based on that event. What is that thing? I want to add the sticky class and all the styles will be applied to this header. There we go. You can see that. I'm going to show it to you like a couple of more times. There we go. So that is exactly what we are trying to do with JavaScript. Just zoom in a little bit more. Let's bring this down. Let's jump into code. So I want to grab all these styles and I want to apply it to the header. All these styles, they're contained within the sticky class. Keep in mind, class. So let's grab our header. This is the name of the variable. And I'm going to tap into the class list of this header. And I'm going to say toggle. So toggle is the same thing that we have in English. Toggle. On and off is toggling in JavaScript. So I want to say toggle sticky. What does that mean? It means if the header does not have the sticky class, add it, give it that sticky class. And if the header has that sticky class, remove it from there. So if the header has it, don't give it, just remove it from there. And if the header doesn't have it, just give it to it. This is what toggling means. So what is that class? That is the sticky class. And when do you want to do that? When the window is scrolled in which direction? In the Y direction. How much? More than 0. So like 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 10 pixel. You can define that right here. But I'm going to say as soon as the scrolling happens, 0 pixels, just go ahead and do that. And I'm going to save that. So let's come into our web page. So as soon as I just scroll even by 0.5 pixels, like half a pixel, then that class is going to be added. You can see how that works. There we go. So that part is done. The only other part remaining is toggling these light and dark versions. That is going to be even simpler. So we want to do all of them within this add event listener, within the scroll event that we have. So when the scroll happens, give the header all the styles, and the next part is either show the light version or the dark version. So I'm going to grab an if statement. This is going to say if something is true, then do this. If that thing is not true, then don't do it. That's basically an if statement. So if the header has a class name, what is that class name? Which is equal to, let's say, header. So if the header has this class name, in what situation the header is going to have that class name? So I'm going to just talk about it in this context. There we go. So whenever we just load our website, the header has a class of header. But if I scroll, the header is no longer only has a class of header. It has a class of header and a class of sticky. So the content of this class changes. Pay attention to the content. We have header, and then we have a space, and then we have sticky. So in this case, the header has only this content, header, And in this situation, what do we want to do? That means that we did not scroll, and when we did not scroll, what do we want to do? We just want to say see the light version. So when we are not scrolling, we want to see the light version, and as soon as we start scrolling, we want to see the dark version. So that's simple. So we want to grab the logo dark. Now, why do we want to grab that? Because in both cases, we are going to see both of the light and dark versions. So when we are not scrolling, let's first hide the dark version. So I'm going to say logo dark dot, let's tap into the class list, and then I'm going to add a class list. I'm going to add a class. What is the name of that class? The name of that, keep in mind, in here you write the name. You're going to write the name hidden. What does that hidden mean? It means it is going to apply this style, display none. So we are not going to see that dark logo. When we are not scrolling, it means the header has only the class of header. We don't want to see the dark version of the logo. Therefore, we are going to say hidden. We are going to add this class to it. But we want to see the light version, right? So from the logo light class list, I know this class has not been added to logo, but we just want to make sure it works correctly. We want to remove this class. I'm going to save that. So if the header has only class of header, I want to grab the dark logo and make it hidden, and I want to grab the light logo and not make it hidden. So this accounts for when we are in this situation. So if I reload the page, you can see we can still see our class. Let's just wait for this. For some reason, this is taking a long time. I don't know what is happening here. Okay. So it did, okay, now you can see that the dark version is actually removed. Now there was that glitch, we are going to get rid of that as well. So that is the one part of the equation. And the next part of the equation says whenever we scroll, you can see the light version we cannot see the light version. So let's get rid of the light version and let's bring back the dark version when we are scrolling. What does that mean? It means else if the next if means that if the header has a class name that is equal to something like this, header dash sticky. There we go. So header sticky, it means that we have scrolled. And then when we have scrolled, what do we want to do? We want to grab the logo dark, and we are going to say class list dot add, dot remove. Let's remove the hidden class. So hidden class, and on the logo light, we want to add that. So basically, we want to hide the light version and we want to show the dark version. Hidden. There we go. Cool. So if I come in here, you can see in the scrolling, we have the dark version, and when we are not scrolling, we have the light version. So how do we know when we are scrolling or not? We take a look at the class for the header. When the header class has only one word, that is header, it means we are not scrolling. Therefore, we just want to see the light version. And when the header has two class names, header and sticky, it means that we are scrolling. And then I want to get rid of the light version and show the dark version. That's how simple it is, applying that with JavaScript. So that part is also done. We were successfully able to do this. And you can see each one of them, they're going to have different hover effects for our anchor elements. So in here, this is the hover effect. We cannot see our links when we hover because their color is going to be the same as the background. That's not the point. We are going to fix that in our next video when we get to styling the hero section. Now, let's go ahead and let's make this smaller. Let's make the window smaller. And what we are going to do is we are going to provide some styles. Now, the JavaScript part is done for the header itself, for the logo. The only thing that still requires JavaScript is the Hamburger menu that we are going to code later in this video. So first off, what we need to do is we need to come up with how we are going to make it responsive, how we are going to make this website responsive. So below 1000, right here, around here, you can see that I'm going to get rid of this body grid that we have so we can see what we're working with. So around 1000, you can see that this space is getting smaller. So what I am going to do is I'm going to decrease the padding on the left and on the right for this header. So let's go ahead and let's jump into our first media query. I'm going to grab the comment from here, media queries. So the first one is at media. Okay, so this is at media screen. What do we want to do here? So we are going to say and now at 1000 and below it. So the maximum width is going to be 1000 width. So this is 1000 pixels, not 100, 1000. What do we want to do? We want to grab the header and we want to reduce its padding on the left and right. We don't want to touch the padding on top and bottom. So I'm going to say padding, top and bottom is going to have its value, which is MV, medium vertical. But for left and right, I'm going to change it to 2 rem. Okay. And then we are going to say, let's save that. Let's take a look at it. There we go. But I want them to be in the center. So you can see that when we get close, the padding is going to get enlarged, and then we are going to have a little bit more space here. I'm going to grab this entire thing and I'm going to put it in the center. So I'm going to say justify content center. Save that. Now it is in the center. This looks a little bit better. So let's go ahead and let's okay, let me take a look at this nav first. We have said that the nav is going to have a width of, where is our nav? So this is the header, this is the nav. The nav has a width of 80% of its container. Where is the nav? Let me grab it. Okay, this is our nav. So the nav has 70% of the width of its container. What I'm going to do is I'm going to span it to 100%. So let me grab this header underscore nav, and I'm going to say width, grab the entire width of the container. There we go. So this is how it is going to look like. This is 100% of the width of the container. Let's keep making the width of the window smaller. And at some point, we are going to provide another media query. So this is 1000. Let's go ahead and make it smaller. You can see they are getting closer and closer together. So what we could do is we could provide a media query at this point. Now at this point, what I want to do is I want to bring this logo on top of the navigation and navigation on the bottom, something like this. So if we keep making the width of the window smaller, below 1000, this is what is going to happen. There we go. And below 870, I assume, this is what is going to happen. So from here, because there isn't enough space on the left side, on this side, we are gonna change it to this orientation. So the logo is on top, the navigation is on the bottom. Okay, let's say media at media screen, and so the maximum width that we want this to be applied is 870. You could do 850, but in my opinion, 870 is the best place to do this. So let me grab one of these comments, put them right here, and I'm going to change it. So we know that within this media query, we have the header section. And within this one, we also have the header section. So let's grab the header. Header is display flex. We want to change the flex direction. So we are going to say display, no, not display. We're just going to say a flex direction. Let's set it to column. Save that. Let's take a look at it. There we go. So this is what we have done. And I can see that we do have a little bit more space on the bottom of the logo than this one. And that is the row axis. That is the row space. And okay. Apart from that, I think everything looks the same. Okay, cool. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide it with a little bit of gap. So gap for the row is going to be 0, and for column is going to be, sorry, for row it's going to be 1, and for column it's going to be 0. Now I think they look the same. We have a little bit of space underneath. Now let's grab, if I scroll down, this is how it is going to look like when the header is in a sticky position. And okay, let's do that. I think the padding is a little bit less on top and bottom than this one. We could reduce the padding, because in this manner, if we go to small screens, you can see this takes a lot of space on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to 800 and something, and I'm going to decrease the padding for that one as well. So that has a class of header.sticky. So when the header is in its sticky position below 870, I want to grab the vertical padding and I'm going to set it to SV, small vertical, and the horizontal padding, I'm going to reduce that as well. I'm going to set it to LH, so large horizontal. Let's save that. Let's fix this border radius a little bit as well. So I'm going to say border bottom left radius. I'm gonna the bottom line is going to be 50%, but the left line I'm going to reduce it to 15%. The same thing I'm going to do for the right one. These are extremely subjective. This I think is how this is how it looks better. I think it comparison looks better to the other border radius that we had, to the 30%. It's a little bit subtle. I want it to be subtle, not gigantic. So I think in here we are done as well. Let's go ahead and let's keep making the width of the window smaller. So you can see we are running out of space. So I think at some point right around 600 and something, like this is 670, we still have a little bit of space on both sides. We could make it smaller and smaller, and around, I would say 640 or 50, I'm going to create that hamburger menu that we have talked about before. So let's jump into the 650. I would say 650. Yeah, let's take a look at our final website. So if I keep making the width of the window smaller, there we go. So around 650, we are going to get rid of all the navigation and we're going to put it right here. So I think that is the last thing that we are going to do here. Then we collapse that part, collapse this media query as well. Let's say at media, screen, and so max width is going to be width. This is going to be 650 pixels. And then before actually doing this, let's just jump back into the web page. And so that happens around 870. What if I change it to 850? I think we do have a little bit of real estate there. So there we go. Around 850 is, I think, cool. So I'm just going to keep it around 850. This is 650. Here is where we are going to have a lot of styles for our hamburger. This is where we create the hamburger. And let's grab this comment for the header. Let's put it right here. So first off, let's grab the header. And I'm going to say flex direction. And I'm going to set it to row again. Let's set it to row and let's go below 650. This is what we have actually done. So this is row, right? But if I come in here, you can see that the logo is on the right. But in this design, the logo is on the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say row reverse, which is going to reverse. And now the logo is on the right. So here is where the logo located. That's cool. Let's grab and let's style the header in its sticky position. We are going to give it a background. We're going to give it a gradient. Gradients in CSS, they're actually background images. So I'm going to say var gradient tertiary. This is the gradient. Let's give it some padding of 1 rem and 6 rem for left and right. So border, bottom, left radius. I'm going to set it 50%. And the left line is going to be 40%. I'm going to increase it. The same thing I'm going to do for right. So that if I come down, this is actually what I've done. Right? Cool. We are gonna, when we get rid of these navigation, this is gonna make a lot more sense. Don't worry about it. So let's grab the logo. I'm gonna say this is the header. Header, we have not grabbed the logo. So logo, I'm gonna give it a Z index of 12. So this is on top of everything else. And I'm gonna grab the header when it is in the sticky position. And from there, I'm gonna grab the direct child, which is our, when it is in sticky position, the direct child is gonna be the anchor element, is gonna be the direct child. Now this is not gonna select all the links or anchor elements within the navigation, because it is only going to select the direct child. The anchor elements within the navigation, they're descendants, they're not direct children. So I'm gonna say margin top is gonna be 1 rem, and I'm gonna give it a Z index. This is when the header is in its sticky position. I'm gonna give it a Z index of 12 as well. Let's grab our header underscore underscore nav, and I'm gonna give it a Z index of, Z index of 10. That's cool. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna style the UL for the nav that we have. I'm gonna style that. So that has a class of header nav links, right? So let's go ahead and let's actually style that. I'm gonna give it a gap of 3 rem. Let's take a look at that. Okay, let's come here. Now this has a gap of 3 rem. We are gonna fix that. We are gonna change the flex direction, and I'm gonna do it right now. So flex direction, let's set it to column. And now everything makes sense, right? We are gonna bring it to bottom, and then we are gonna hide it so the logo can go to its original place. So I'm gonna say position fixed. Now you can see now, as soon as I do this and I provide it with some dimension, with some coordinates like bottom 0 and left 0, and I'm gonna say the width is gonna be 100 VW. It's gonna grab the width of the container at all times. You can see that the logo is actually in its original place where we want it to be. And this is what we have done. So all of this is JavaScript. Cool. This is our UL. This is where the UL is actually located. I'm going to give it a background image, which is going to be a gradient. So that is going to be gradient secondary. Let's give it a padding of 3 rem for top and bottom, and 5 rem for left and right. Border top left radius, top left radius. Why, you might be asking? When I click on this, you can see that this is border top left and this is border top right. So 50% for the top line and 10% for the left line. And I'm gonna do the same thing for right as well. So it's gonna be 50% for the top line and 50% for the right one. I'm going to give it a Z index of 10. And now let's get rid of it. Let's save that. Let's take a look at it, what we have done. Now, by default, I don't want to see this. I don't. What I want to see is nothing. When I click on that hamburger menu, then I want to see that. But before actually getting rid of this, we need to make sure that the color is white. So the contrast is better. So how can we select those anchor elements? We can see clearly when the header is in its sticky position. So this is when the header is in its normal position, the color is white, but when the header is in its sticky position, the color of the navigation links, it's black. So let's change it to white as well. So when the header is in its sticky position, we want to grab all of the header links, anchor elements, and we are going to say color var color primary. Save that. There we go. So in both cases, the color is going to be white. Now let's get rid of it. Let's hide it. And when the hamburger menu is clicked, we are going to show it again. That's magic that we are going to do. So I'm going to say transform, translated along the y-axis by 100 rem, which is 1000 pixels. So 100, 1000 When you give it a positive value, it is going to go towards the bottom. So when we want it to reappear, it's going to reappear from the bottom. So 100 rem. That's it. So now we can, it has been moved 1000 pixels below where the user can actually see. And when we create this hamburger menu and click on it, then it is going to shoot back up. Let's grab our hamburger menu. It is time to create that. So hamburger, this is the hamburger. The hamburger menu has a class of hamburger. And I'm going to give it, for now, I'm going to give it a background color of black so we can see where it actually lies. I'm going to give it a height of 2.5 rem, a width of 6 rem. Let's take a look at it, where that is. So above 650, you're not going to see that hamburger. It is only seen below 650. Keep that in mind. So this is our hamburger. I could zoom in so you could really see where the lines are. Don't worry about this hero. We are going to fix that in our next video. Okay, let's say position fixed. And then I'm going to say from the top, come down by 1.5 rem. From the left, so if you specify left, the hamburger is going to appear on the left. If you specify right, the hamburger is going to appear on the right. So from the left, move by 4 rem. The cursor is going to be pointer when I hover on it, and z index is going to be 11. Keep this in mind. Z index is going to be 11. And then we are going to say hamburger line. This is hamburger line, hamburger dash line. This is the styles that we're going to provide to all of the lines that we have, all 3 lines. So all of them, they're going to be position absolute. And let's give them background color, var tertiary 3. And I'm going to give them a height of 2 pixels or 0.2 rem, 2 pixel. This time I'm going to use pixels. And I'm going to transition them when they form a cross. So all 0.35 seconds, and the timing function is going to be a cubic Bezier. This is going to be that cubic Bezier. Okay, let's save that. We don't see any of the lines. Let's go ahead and let's actually create those lines. The reason that we don't see them is because the position is position absolute. That's why we can't actually see them. Now, unless we provide them with coordinates like top, bottom, left, right, we are not going to see those lines. So I'm going to say hamburger. Where am I typing? So hamburger line. Now let's grab the first child, because all 3 of them, they're going to have different positions. So the first one is going to be top 0, left 0, and the width is going to be 50% of its parent. Then I'm just going to, you know what, I'm just going to copy paste them 2 times, and we're going to change the pseudo class selector. So this is going to be nth child 2. This is going to come from the top by 50%. And we could say left 0, and the width for this one is going to be 100%. And the last child of the hamburger, I'm just going to say last. This is going to be, this is going to appear on the bottom. So instead of top 0, we are going to say bottom 0. And instead of left 0, we are going to say right 0. The width is going to be 50%. Let's save that. Let's take a look at them. So this is actually what I'm trying to do. So one appears from there. The other one, the first one appears from left. The second one, the third one, sorry. The third one appears from right. Cool. So this is what we've actually done there. I could change the color. Now the color is tertiary. I'm going to keep it there. You know what? I'm going to change it to primary for the time being, so I can show them to you. These are the lines, where the lines are actually located. Let's get rid of this black color for the hamburger. Now we can see our lines. We don't really need that. Now, the only thing remaining is we need to provide classes for when we click on the hamburger. And those classes will be applied to each specific line that we have created. So on line 1, these are dynamic classes. Keep in mind, dynamic classes are the kind of classes that JavaScript applies to HTML elements. So this class is going to transform, rotate 765 degree, a highly experimented number, and translate 1.25 rem along the x-axis and 0.4 rem along the y-axis. These are the properties that we're going to apply on line 1 when we click on the hamburger. And how do we apply them? Through JavaScript. We have already seen that. And I'm going to say width 70%, and I'm going to add the @important, because, oops, no, it is not it is important, exclamation mark important, because this style is not going to be applied because here are two classes. The specificity is greater than this one. Cool. This is line 1. For line 2, we want to make it invisible. We don't want to see it. We want to get rid of it. So I'm going to say visibility. So you could say display none. You could say visibility hidden. There we go. So it is not visible anymore. And for line 3, let me just grab line 1 and put it right here. And I'm going to change it to line 3. Now these classes, they have not been applied on anything, because we have not coded the logic through JavaScript. So we are going to say rotate negative 450. So one is going to be rotating along the clockwise. The other one is going to be rotating anti-clockwise. And the distance is going to be different as well. So this is going to be 0.1. And this is going to be negative 1.7. Everything else is going to stay the same. Let's save that. Let's come here. Let's click. Nothing happens because we did not do the JavaScript. So in JavaScript, what do we want to do? We need to grab the hamburger itself, the first line, the second line, and the third line. We need to grab all of those lines. And we are going to grab the navigation as well, because remember, we got rid of the navigation. We have no way of bringing it back because we have actually moved it to bottom by 1000 pixels. We need to move it back. So we need to grab 5 things in JavaScript. Now, as a common practice in JavaScript, whenever you're creating variables, all of them, they have to be towards the top of the document or towards the top of the file. But because I want to separate different codes, this is the comment in JavaScript. Because I want to separate code in JavaScript, I'm going to break that rule. This is just for teaching purposes. So you know, the logic for the header is on the top. The logic for the hamburger menu is right down the bottom. So you know that, where the logic for each of the pieces of functionality resides. This is header. Oops, this is header. There. So here is the header, here is the hamburger menu. This is against best practices, but for teaching purposes, this is actually a good idea. So one way for creating variables was let. You know what, I'm not going to jump into more JavaScript. I'm just going to say let again. So first, let's grab our burger. We know that we are going to grab the document because all of the elements, they're within the document. And we are going to say query selector. Now in here, we do have an element that has a class of burger. And then I'm going to say let burger first line. There we go. So burger first line. There we go. And we are going to say document.query selector. So what is the class for that? It is hamburger. I could select it from CSS. This is the class. This is very valid in JavaScript because this is valid in CSS. Keep in mind to grab the dot because you're within these quotes, you're signifying that you are using a CSS selector. So CSS selectors, they have a dot. But when you want to add a class, you don't do the dot because this class list, it already signifies that you're trying to work with a class. So you don't need to denote it 2 times to say, okay, 2 times classes. This class list, it removes the need for, or it removes the need to use that dot because it already says class list. That's why within these classes we don't have any dots, because it says class. When it doesn't say class, like in here in CSS Selector, like in this query selector, we are not sure whether we want to grab a class, we want to grab an attribute selector, an ID selector. Therefore, you need to provide it the complete thing, the complete CSS selector. But in here, in the class list or class name, you can only write the name of that class. But within these quotes, you could do any kind of valid CSS, whether that is an ID selector, a class selector, a pseudo class selector, universal selector, doesn't really matter. Therefore, when you are able to do anything, you need to pay attention to what it is that you're actually trying to do. The next ones, they're going to be burger second line. So second line, and this is going to be burger third line. So for the burger second line, we have nth child 2. You can see this is a valid CSS selector. And this is going to be last child. And finally, we are going to grab the nav. And it is going to say document.query selector. And let's grab the nav. So the nav is going to be header __ nav links. Where is that? Here is the nav. We are going to go, because this is what we have moved towards the bottom by 100 rem. We need to bring it back. Let's copy that, and we are going to put it in CSS. But before actually trying to do that, I need to provide a transition here as well. So it moves in a transition way. So it transitions to top. And the cubic Bezier is going to be, cubic 175. There we go. So I've already copied that. Let's put that right here. Let's save that. So we have selected all of these. Now let's think about, so when the burger is clicked, I told you that anything you do on a web page, that is an event in JavaScript. So click is another event, as with the scroll that we had. So I'm going to say burger.add event listener. Add event listener is going to listen for those events. And when that event happens, it is going to do something. So what is that event? It is a click event. And when that click happens, what do you want to do? I'm going to do something. So when you want to do something, you need to open a function in JavaScript. That's simple. Okay, I'm going to provide an E. The E is actually that specific event that you're trying to work with. And I'm going to remove it. I don't really need to provide it here. So when the hamburger menu is clicked, what do I want to do with the first line? To the first line, I want to add a class. So I'm going to say class list, and I'm going to say toggle. So toggle is going to be either add or remove. So if you want to combine the add function and the remove function, you're going to say toggle. Toggle is a little bit intelligent in the sense that if that burger first line, it has that class, it is going to remove it. And if it doesn't have it, it is going to provide it. What is that class? That class name is line 1. Keep in mind, no dots, because we have already said this is a class. We don't need to say it again. So for the burger second line, what do you want to do? So burger second line, we want to toggle line 2. There we go. And for burger third line, we want to toggle line 3. There we go. So that part is done. Now let's just save it. Let's take a look at our page. So you can see this is, now when we click on the hamburger menu, those styles, they're being applied on it. And this jumping around, this forming, that is actually those styles that we have applied on these. And next up, when we click on it, what else do we want to do? We also want to see our navigation. We want to see those lines forming across as well as our navigation. So where is our navigation? The navigation is going to have a class list, a toggle. Okay, have we provided a class for, let me just take a look at this. So it is line 1. Where is the class for why we want to see that? So Okay, so we need to classes. We want to see that. We want to see our navigation. So we want to provide it with a class. That class is something that we have not created in here yet, because we need to go ahead and we need to create that as well. Okay, so let me just take a look at my reference. Why have I forgotten to create those? Where are they? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say block dot visible. When we want the block to be visible, we are gonna say transform translate. What was the translate? Translate y. Let's set it to 0. So we want to add this class to our navigation. So keep in mind there are two classes, block and visible. So if the navigation has those classes, through toggle it is going to remove them. If it doesn't have it, through toggle it is going to add it. It is going to have those. And I'm going to do the same one for visible as well. Save that. And let's come in here. Let's click on it. Let's zoom out. Okay, the page is reloading. For some reason, it is taking some time. Okay, there we go. Click, the hamburger menu comes up. The navigation comes up. Click again, it is going to go away. Click, click. So click, click. It is not disappearing, it is moving towards the bottom. And you can see it is going towards the bottom, but it happens very fast because the transition timing is not a lot. So if I put it to 2 seconds, you're going to see how it actually works. So if I click on it, see, 2 seconds. The fact that it is jumping towards the top and just then setting down, that is because of the timing function. And then it goes down. See, it goes down. There we go. So let me put it to 0.35. It has to be a little bit fast. There we go. Cool, 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 cool. So there is something that I need to do here, and I think you have seen that. So you can see right here, we can see our logo dark. So as until we move down, the logo dark is going to be appear. Now this is not a good UI, right? So if I reload this page, you can see right from the start, we don't see that logo dark. So there is another piece of functionality that is still missing. So I'm going to come to JavaScript. This is going to be a little bit of advanced, but I'm going to actually go ahead and try to explain it to you. So I'm going to say let page load. This is our variable. You're going to say performance. Now these properties and functions that I'm going to use, they are some of them that I went through the documentation for JavaScript. They were deprecated, so I had to come up with better ways. So I'm going to say get entries by type. So which entry it is that I want to get by type? I'm going to say it is the navigation. We are going to get this entry by its type. And from there, I want to grab the first element of that. Now, the square brackets in JavaScript signifies an array, and we are going to grab the first. In Python, it is called a list. In JavaScript, sometimes you mix these up. In JavaScript, it's called an array. And I'm going to say if page load dot type is equal to reload. When the page is reloaded, what do I want to do? Now, when the page is reloaded, it means that the page has already loaded and the user refreshes the page. And I'm going to use a logical operator. This is the OR logical operator. So if the page is reloaded or the page is navigated, it means that the page is being seen for the first time. What do I want to do? So first, let's provide that page load dot type. I told you this is a little bit of advanced, and we are going to say navigate. This is when the page is being shown for the first time. I'm going to say logo dark.classlist.add. Which class list do I want to add? I want to add header. Why do I want to do this? Because let's just remove that. Let's come in here. Now you can see when you go to the page itself, you can see both of the logos. This looks very horrible. And when you reload, you're going to see them again. Now, when you go to that page, you don't want to see the dark logo as long as you're not scrolling. When you scroll, then you want to see the dark logo. So I'm going to comment these in. And by default, we should not see this black logo. It should go away. Okay, the page is reloading. You can see this basic, there we go. So, and when I reload, it is not going to come back. Because for both of them, we have provided logic. So if the page is reloading or if the page is navigating in the navigation, which means that the user is browsing it for the first time. When you open that page, you should not see the dark logo until you scroll down. So this was like a little bit tricky JavaScript, a little bit advanced. And this is what I try to explain this in in common terms. Cliche. So we are done with this navigation. So let's go to the desktop version. And as we decrease that, they are going to rearrange themselves all the way to here. There we go. So this is completely responsive. Doesn't matter what the screen size is. Completely responsive. Light, dark. Light, dark. Cool. So with this, our lecture comes to an end. In the next one, what we're going to do is loaded CDN, Cloudflare. This is font awesome. For some reason, this is not being loaded. Loading for the reason for that is because I don't know, for some reason my internet connection, it says no internet, disconnected. It should say internet. I mean, why not? No internet. I don't have any internet connection. That's why it says. That's why it's taking some time to load the script when I'm changing the script, because there is no connection. The server is running a little bit difficult. So with this, our lecture comes to an end. See you in the next one.